me know if you.
Is it working now?
Okay, I'm not sure who this is. John, can you hear us? John Conrad, can you hear us? I believe John has joined us. I'm just getting him to.
Yeah.
John, can you hear us?
He's I mean, it says he's got his he's not muted, but he's got his camera off.
Correct.
Do you want to speak gallery or speaker view?
Speaker view started for me. He just. I think I need copies of everything.
Yes,
Good thing, okay.
yeah, that's it. It looks like I have everything.
Let me see if I can call him here. Hold on.
Say that again.
Executive session.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And are they doing that at the end or in the middle?
I can either make it happy.
Okay.
I'll just be here all
Brett Peterson is in the house.
Oh, wait, you have the whole room to yourself.
Just me and the camera.
I mean, it's space for activities.
It's that gorgeous game.
Want me to move?
Oh. Nope. John, can you hear us? He cannot. All right.
I mean, according to the panelists court, I mean, we have a quorum. We can't see, we don't think we have Bill Holly. John's there somewhere, but he's not able to speak, but I think everybody else is here. Okay, court's not here right now.
It's in and out.
That's not going to work.
Uh-oh.
I wonder if someone has the YouTube on. They can't have the volume on that.
I think it's because I think he's doing something with his phone. I think. Because he even said, oh, I can't do that. I think he heard that. That's why I didn't want to have everybody with laptops.
Yeah.
Because we had the same thing in the speaker sets, so I just did this.
Yeah.
And then that one, we can hit that button, so all you gotta do is hit that button, if anybody shows up if not, and have the speakers turned off, so when he sounds,
I won't come to lunch.
so that we don't have feedback.
Ashley, I don't know if you can hear me, but do we know what happened to Court?
I can hear you. Let me go check on him. He may be talking to John.
Okay.
Jim, I'm moving John over here. Hold on.
Okay, I got you. I see you now.
Okay. John, I've got you. I got you on your wife's iPad. I'm going to hang up. Can you hear us through the computer?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you now. I'm going to hang up on the phone. Goodbye.
Oh,
John, can you hear us?
yes, I can.
Excellent. Okay. So Ashley, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Conrad have joined us. And that should be all.
And I have good audio, Court.
Excellent. Can everyone else good to go then?
I'm surprised. It
Okay, well then, John, you can go ahead and get us started.
Alrighty. I guess I'll call the May 7th Joint Operating Committee meeting to order. If I may lead in a pledge of allegiance, and we'll observe a moment of quiet meditation. Anyway, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
For which it stands, one nation,
under God,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mrs. Lomenzo, roll call, please.
Mr. Conrad?
Here.
Ms. Daniels Wells?
Here.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Here.
Mr. Marburger?
Here.
Mrs. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Nickel?
Present.
Mr. Peterson?
Here?
Mrs. Scott?
Here.
And Mr. Zeitz?
Here. Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Lomenzo. Is any public online to be heard?
There is no public either in person or online.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Schleifer. And the next item, do you have a director's report for us?
I do, Mr. Conrad. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know that Mr. Shingleton is attending via an attendee, so welcome. But the rest is, everyone is attending as their members. So just reminder for Zoom webinar notes, as far as mute and unmute and your camera. If you're having issues cutting in and out, you may want to turn your camera off. It seems like everyone's working great, so let's not mess with a good thing right now. Okay, there are some updates to the agenda, Exhibit 7 and the Treasurer's Report. Our Director's Newsletter is in Exhibit 1. Enrollment Report is Exhibit 2. Our media is in Exhibit 3. We've got a correspondence in Exhibit 4. We hosted the Majority Policy Committee Roundtable at our school right before all the fun happened. Dr. Orozco was missed in roll call. Ashley.
Oh, I have her noted.
She is present. And then we had a couple late additions to the packet. One of them is a JOC letter that Mr. Conrad presented that I wanted to share with everyone, and he has asked that be placed delivered to our staff, students, and parents electronically. So that we'll be delivering it to everyone that we can through digital media. And we just want to say thank you very much. We appreciate the JOC's feelings and sentiments, and it goes a long way. You know, everyone has been working very hard to make things work here, so it is very much appreciated, and it makes that much better when you understand people. You understand that people are appreciating your efforts. So thank you very much. The next item is also something that was added to the packet, and it's actually going to be the second and third pages there. What we have is it's a draft amendment to our Articles of Agreement. Some time ago, the JOC discussed the possibility of carrying over funds to be used for capital expenditures. Presently, any fund that is not expended after audit is returned to the sending districts through the same formula that they are collected. So it was suggested in an effort when large expenditures come up, it would be beneficial for the JOC, for the BCAVTS to maintain a fund so that if there are large expenditures, we wouldn't have to go out and really adversely affect the budgets moving forward. You know, our budget is under $6 million. You can imagine what like a $500,000 expenditure would do to the increase. So whereas, you know, as we are fiscally prudent and have an return funds every year, we wanted to look at the possibility of doing that. You know, we looked into this, but what happened is that we hit a snag in that the complications deal with our Articles of Agreement. And our Articles of Agreement are very straightforward as to what we need to do, and more importantly, how things are funded, because that's the second issue. The majority of our budget is funded through a 3-year cumulative average daily membership, the amount of students that your district send. But anything that is an expenditure above what we refer to as the break point, which is for next year, it's $79,884. It's funded differently. It's actually funded through an entirely different formula. It's 50% instructional time memberships, which is basically the amount of juniors and seniors you have in your district, and the other 50% is your assessed property values. So it's a very, very different formula. So because of that, you know, Tom Bress suggested that we utilize, and also, by the way, any changes to that Articles of Agreement have to be done by the joint board, which is all 63 board members of Butler County. It can't be just the JOC saying, let's do this. The JOC can determine where funds are expended, but they can't make a change to the Articles of Agreement. So Tom suggested we go with an amendment to the Articles of Agreement. And what he's provided here is a draft to what that would look like. So at the top, you'll see item 14 is capital expenditures. That's referencing the 14th item in the Articles of Agreement. And it starts off with the purchase of, and there's plenty of information there. And what he's suggesting, and once again, this is just draft, is that we add a letter D to that. And that would state, regardless of any language to the contrary, the Joint Operating Committee shall have the power and authority to establish a capital improvement account to fund the capital improvement account as provided in paragraph 15, which is the next item coming down. Operating expense to retain and carry over the capital improvement funds from year to year, and to expend the funds deposited therein in accordance with paragraph 14, which is above, which is capital expenditures. And then the second, so we move down to 15, paragraph 15, which is the operating expense, which starts off presently with the Butler County Area Vocational-Technical School Joint Board, and then information. And then the language we're looking to add is going to be something like this. Now, there's some values in here that we can decide upon, or you can decide upon, I should say. But basically, regardless of any language to the regardless of any language to the contrary, the Joint Operating Committee shall have the power and authority to establish a capital improvement fund not to exceed, and 10% is just a number that we've placed in there, of the total operating budget for the current year. In order to fund this capital improvement account, the Joint Operating Committee is authorized to withhold up to, and once again, this is just a value that we've chosen, $100,000 in capital expenditure funds annually from the excess operating funds ordinarily returned to each participating school district. Since the funds contributed to the account constitute capital expenditure funds, which are contributed by the participating school districts under a funding formula different than the funding formula for operating expense funds, the school's business manager shall prepare an annual report detailing the methodology utilized to calculate, I should say, each participating district's contribution to the capital improvement fund. Any excess operating expense funds which are not used to satisfy a participating school district's obligation to the capital improvement fund shall be annually returned to the respective participating school district in the same manner they normally would. And then under no circumstances shall a participating school district be required to contribute funds beyond the annual excess operating funds to meet its annual obligation to the capital expenditure. So basically that, as I said, that's just some sample, so a draft language on how this can be done. We can play with those values, but basically what it's saying is that we would create this capital expenditure fund. The fund would never grow to be more than 10% of the present year's budget. So right now we're $5.5 million or so. So the maximum it could be would be $550,000, assuming we go with 10%. And then the second value is we would collect funds, the money going back. If we choose the number $100,000, it would be $100,000 of whatever goes back would then be diverted into this fund, and we would continue to divert every year until we would reach the max, and that obviously we would use it as necessary. If there was a year when one of the schools' shares would be less than what it would take to reach 100,000, then 100,000 would not be the number. It would be whatever that maximum is. So that once again, no school would be contributing more than what they would be receiving. So does anybody have any initial questions with respect to that? Mr. Peterson?
Mr. Spiker, the question.
Hold on, Mr. Conrad. Mr. Peterson?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Court, two questions, actually. What is the amount that typically is returned to the sponsoring schools?
We typically are somewhere in the $200,000 range. However, this year, because of a couple of factors, we're actually going to be returning over $500,000 this year. But this isn't going to happen fast enough to have an impact on that. But normally we're somewhere in the $200,000 range, somewhere in that ballpark.
My second question is, have you taken the temperature of the superintendents on this?
Quite a while ago, we did. And unfortunately, we wwere going in one direction, and it wasn't until Tom Breath said that's not going to work. So we did. This was several months ago. This was discussed in the superintendent meeting that we would be the JOC was asking to do this, and they didn't have a problem with respect to as long as it was capped, and as long as it would only be used for a capital expenditure. Well, this can only be used for capital expenditures, and that's another caveat. This can only be used for something that's going to be above the break point. And that could be a little bit of a sticking point, but it's just the way it has to be. So as I said, right now it's $79,000. Well, what that means is that if we had a piece of equipment that was $70,000 and needed to be replaced, we could not use this fund for that because it doesn't reach that threshold. But that's just the way, because of the funding differences. So
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Conrad?
Yeah, actually, I had two questions as well. The first question is what majority do we need to approve this of all 63 board directors? 2/3?
Simple majority, as per Tom Breath.
Oh, okay. And the next question I was wondering about the amount with respect to the total amount. Will that need to be included as part of the following year, the coming year's budget, or is this like an emergency fund? Like if a boiler blows up, then we use that, or does that be part of the budget?
No, it would not be part of the budget. Rebecca, jump in if I'm incorrect. This would be a separate fund. It would be carried over from year to year. It would not be part of the budget, and it would be used at the JOC's discretion for something that would be above that break point. So, for instance, if we had a $300,000 expense to purchase new windows for the facility, and the JOC agreed, yep, this is a good idea. We've got the money to do it. Let's do it. That's the kind of thing this would be used for.
Hey, Court, it's Brian White.
Yes.
Couple thoughts and questions. I've been generally supportive of this all along. And I do think it helps to have the VOTEC to have some form of capital funds. But in light of where we are right now, I'm not sure all 7 districts superintendents would agree. Even myself, I'm having a little bit of consternation with $500,000 not going back to the districts. Is there any talk about putting a cap on this fund? And then also sort of reassessing where the districts are at, because I think we're going to be experiencing some horrific budgetary decisions.
Absolutely. Well, right now, the cap, what we were projecting a cap would be 10% of the operating budget. And that would be the overall. And then annually, the total amount right now, the maximum would be $100,000. So Dr. White, does that make sense?
Yep, that makes me feel a little bit better. Thanks.
Yeah. And once again, these are numbers that this is just a draft. If we felt that those weren't appropriate, then they could be adjusted to be something else. But that's just numbers that, that we're bandying about previously.
Court, this is obviously this. So this is just a point of information for this evening. This isn't anything we're acting on tonight, correct?
No. This is just something, we've been talking about this for quite a while. Tom provided this to me today, so I'm just sharing it with you to see, in what direction do we want to go? Because the next step I would be that he would create a final that the JOC would be happy with, and then it would go out to the 7 districts for them to vote on.
I mean, I'd like to see, and I probably haven't seen it, but I'd like to make sure that all members of the committee have a copy of the Articles of Agreement. And if you could ask Tom to put together like a red line, sort of a comparative of, what it looks like today and what he is proposing. I think we all need to see the broader context of the current Articles of Agreement.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, in terms of logistics, I would expect we need to have some language that speaks to, and somebody alluded to it, and Court, you've kind of alluded to it as well. Any expenditures from this capital improvement fund would need to have the approval of the Joint Operating Committee. I mean, and I don't know I don't see, there's a couple of paragraphs you're looking to amend. I don't see that being alluded to. I think we need to put a little bit more meat, thinking through that particular account. Once we agree to have it established, how is it approved, how is it utilized, those sorts of things.
Okay. Mr. Peterson.
Court, I'm certainly not second guessing or over guessing Mr. Brett's expertise, but I just wonder for your consideration, if once we get this next iteration, if maybe our accountant should also be part of the review committee, just to make sure we're not stepping into something we don't realize.
Well, actually, that's where this all started was through the auditor. When you say accountant, are you referring to the auditor?
Yeah, Mark Turner.
The auditor, yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that would be a good idea. And that's actually where we all started with this. And he took us in one direction, and his suggestion was different than what Tom came up with. So we would have to circle back.
I think that'd be advisable. Thank you.
Yeah. So, once again, we're just in draft status. I just wanted to get you something to look at. So with respect to that, I will get this back to Tom. We'll make sure all of you have, and with respect to the Articles of Agreement, all this would be in addition to, these would be added on paragraphs, but we'll do that whatever way makes the most sense. And we'll make sure that we beef up the language that it's clear that any expenditure would have to be JOC approved. Does anyone else have any other comment?
No, I'll just look for a copy of the current articles and some sort of red line comparative of what we're suggesting would be the amendment.
Got it. And with respect to those numbers, what kind of adjustment would you like to make to them, or are you okay with those at this time?
Well, I think we've got a lot more debate about what the numbers look like. Candidly, just my first reaction is the 10% max is a little north of what I have in mind. But you know, I'm open to suggestion. I think let's take baby steps, and you know, but I think that we need to have some more debate, discussion about what the dollar amounts look like.
Okay, well then I won't make any changes of those at this point in time. We'll save that for the next round.
Yeah.
Discussion. Okay. So we'll get you some information out in the meantime, and then we can pick this discussion up at our next JOC meeting.
Okay.
Is everyone satisfied with that?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Couple items to finish up. I just wanted to make mention of our instructors and the job that they are doing. You know, there is, I know I mentioned it in our last JOC meeting, director's report, but you know, that it's difficult for every instructor to be forced to deliver strictly online if that was not what their intent is. But for a CTE instructor, it's not much worse. So it's very difficult, but they've been doing an amazing job. They've been sitting in on trainings. Our technology coordinator has been delivering trainings. Our online learning management system is called Canvas, and they've been embracing it and really going to town. And I'm just absolutely, you know, very, very, very impressed with the job they're doing. Hey, Dr. White, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
That was my previous question, sorry.
Done for. And you know, and with respect to that, I know we've seen an increased student participation in our Canvas. You know, it's been, you know, slow going, but things have been gaining some momentum. Dr. Heiler, I believe we're somewhere in the 2/3 category. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So we're hoping that continues to increase. We're seeing some good online collaboration going on, which is really important in this time. You know, our award ceremony, online options. We've had some discussions with counselors within the Northwest region, talking about, you know, what each CTC is doing with respect to their ceremonies and trying to. We've been working together collaboratively. Our CTDSL, Marsha Welsh, that stands for Career and Technical Distinguished School Leader. It's something that's supplied free of charge through the Bureau of Career and Tech Ed. Has been organizing Zoom meetings. She organized one for counselors in Western PA to get together in this time and talk about things that they are doing. We also have, she's also putting one together. She's done one for heavy equipment instructors previously, but now I say in this time she's doing it through Zoom for teachers in graphic design, commercial art, digital media, and getting those teachers to collaborate, working on the things that they're doing this time. Our auditor's report has been moved to June 11th, 2020. And that will also be our authority board meeting. We moved that as well. And our next regular JOC meeting is also scheduled for June 11th, 2020 at 7 p.m. And Mr. Conrad, that concludes my director's report.
Thank you very much. And again, I thank you on behalf of the board for all the work that you and your staff has been doing. It's, I understand the trying circumstances. I know we've all been making significant adjustments to the new normal, and I think you guys are bearing the brunt of that type of change, and we thank you. My hat is up. Anyway,
Thank you.
with that, we have a motion in a second. Board.
Moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if you speak up, I can only see about 2/3 of you because the screen only holds 9 people. But anyway, second, Mr. Peterson was the first. Who's the second?
This is Dr. Orozco. I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there further discussion?
I just,
All in favor, say
Cord,
aye,
I'd just like, hey, John.
Hold on, we have further discussion.
So Cord, just anecdotally, I'm curious how you're talking about some online and some good participation, but I'm just here, generally speaking, whether it's from you or from Regina, I mean, all of our students, are they able to finish up, the way they need to finish up with whatever certifications, or, I mean, how are all of our seniors, finishing up? And I'm not looking for too much into the weeds. I'm just trying to get a sense overall of how they're wrapping things up. How are things going with all of them?
Dr. Harlow, you want to go ahead and take that?
Sure. Would you like to know about just different things that we are doing with the seniors? We are,
I mean, are they? I guess
okay.
are they finishing up
You're talking
okay?
curricularly.
Yeah, I mean, are they graduating the way we would normally have them graduate?
Well, I mean, since they don't graduate from here, but they do receive the certificate. So yeah,
Right.
and that's what we're going to be discussing a little bit later with their certificates, where part of the 3 levels of certificates, one of them is that the students have to pass the NOCTI, or I'm sorry, get a advanced on NOCTI, and they're not able to take NOCTI. So we're going to talk about that tonight a little bit and hope that you guys see what we're seeing, because we want them to still be able to get their certificates. But yes, they are getting certificates. They are still participating in online learning. Some students are getting assignments mailed home. We are doing some fun things with them too, which I won't get into, but we're just trying to make sure that they feel that they're ending their senior year as normal as possible. We know it's almost impossible. And also there's some talk about possibly students being able to come back to get certifications possibly this summer, but that's something that's still in the works. We do have a lot of our students who are already certified, because students start getting certified, get certifications here in 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th. But if any students have slipped, we're figuring that out. We're speaking with teachers, we're gathering information, and we're also sitting in, as Mr. Spiker said, a lot of collaboration with other VOTECs, with their other career tech centers, other VOTECs with what they're doing, and also the Bureau of Career Tech Ed, and also Department of Education. So we're keeping a lot of communication open, but we're not going to have students, to answer shortly, even though I did it long, students who aren't going to be able to get their certificate of completion from this school because of this COVID-19. We're doing everything in our power to get them to what they need. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I'll look forward to hearing more.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Go ahead, Mr. Conrad.
There
Sorry.
you go. That's all right. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay. Upon hearing none, would all in favor say aye, please? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so very much. We have before us an election as well for a treasurer for the term of July 1st, 2020 to July 1st, 2021. At this moment in time, I'd like to open the nominations, and may I please have a first and a second to open the nominations.
I'd make a motion to open the nominations. Jim Nickel.
Thank you, Mr. Nickel.
Second, Heather.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Nominations are open. May I please entertain a nomination?
I nominate Gordon Marburger.
Okay, upon hearing any further nominations, I would suggest that we close the nominations. If I may have a first and a second to close them.
Move to close.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peterson. For a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Roscoe. And may I please have a voice vote on the closure of the nominations? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Super, thank you. And based on the fact that we have only one nomination, congratulations, Mr. Marburger. You get the sign text for.
Don, you still need to have a vote on that.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Do you not have a voice?
And that,
Yeah, just.
yeah, we can. Oh, sorry, maybe it's premature. Okay, I thought that since there was no second nomination, we would need to, but okay. All in favor? May I please have a motion and a second to approve Mr. Marburger as treasurer?
So moved, Heather.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Scott. Anyone, and a second, please?
Second, Jim Nickel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nickel. Any further discussion or question? Upon hearing none, all in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Bargerberger, again.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
moving on. Okay, moving on, we have the meeting minutes from April 2nd. May I please have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Nicole, is there a second out there?
Second,
I'll second
Deb
Jen.
Miller.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Miller. Any further questions or comments regarding those meeting minutes? Okay, all in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, moving on to business. We have before us the donations from Hyman Trucking. And we also have advertising for employment positions for the 2021 year. We also have a depository recommendation for next year. And we also have a general advisory committee recommendation for approval as shown in Exhibit 6. We also have a website recommendation to approve. We also have before us an amendment to the high mark assignment. And we also have an award bid for Technology Smart Mark Fiber Laser. We also have, we're soliciting bids for welding. And we also have a job description in Exhibit 8 for the lead instructor, technology coordinator, and the network technology coordinator. We also have the 2019 and 2020 requirements for as outlined in Exhibit 9. May I please have a motion and a second for all those items?
So moved, Jim Nickel.
Second, Jen Wells.
Okay, thank you,
Second,
Mr.
Deborah
Nickel.
Miller.
Second. Okay, thank you. I think Mrs. Wells had there by half a second. But anyway, I'm sure this will result in some discussion. Is there any discussion or comment regarding these items?
John, I have a question. It's Fred.
Oh, fire away.
I'm just curious on the special ed teachers, instructor. It wasn't specified whether there was a 9-month or a 12-month position. What do we hire there?
Oh, it's a 9-month. It's a regular bargaining unit position, 186 days.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, roll call, please, Mrs. Lemenza.
Mr. Nickel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad,
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Zeitz,
Yes.
Dr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Marburger,
Yes.
and Ms. Daniel Wells.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Motion passes. Moving on. I'm guessing we don't need an executive session, or do we, Mr. Spiker?
No, we will plan to have one at the end of the meeting. I will send out a separate
Okay.
link for that at that
All right.
point in time.
Okay, super. And then moving on to personnel, we have a health savings account contributions. May I please have a motion and a second to approve those as shown in Exhibit 10?
So moved, Nickel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nickel. A second?
Second, Miller.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Miller. Any discussion or questions regarding the HSA contributions? Okay, upon hearing none. Oh,
If I may,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm very, very chatty tonight, Mr. President, but I've read this multiple times and I just can't seem to get it to make sense to me. It says will contribute to individual health savings accounts all but 0.02% of employee annual salary multiplied by 12 months. Can you explain to me does that mean that one way I read it was we're funding 99.8% of the employee's annual salary. I know that's not what it means, but could you just help me to understand, process this?
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Right, so if you take the 2019-2020 salary, and then if you multiply it, sorry, my computer, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we're good.
Okay, so you take it's all based on the individual's health savings account deductible, whether it's an individual or whether it's all others. And so what we do is we take the employee salary and we multiply that by 0.2%, deduct that from the family or individual deductible by 12 months.
So what you're looking at, it ends up being a value that is considerably smaller than their deductible. So, if their deductible is 2,600, we might be funding somewhere between, 500 and 1,500 of that, depending on what their salary is. The more money they make, the less the JOC funds their health savings account. And as their salaries go up, they fund less and less of it.
Can they voluntarily add to that deduction and thereby reap a tax savings on that money set aside?
Yeah, it's not. They're adding to that to their HSA. Yes, they can also contribute to their HSA up to the IRS dedicated or determined maximum
limit
each year. And you are correct.
Okay.
So this is back into negotiations from not this prior contract, but the one before. Well, it might have been the prior contract, where slowly but surely we're having all the individuals under the collective bargaining agreement contribute a little more and a little more into the HSA, right? Or if you flip it on the reverse, the VOTEC is contributing a little less and a little less over time. And so, but yeah, by all means, to the extent they want to contribute more of their own money into an HSA, they're absolutely able to do that.
All right, thank you both.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, roll call, please, Mrs. Lemenza.
Mr. Nickel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Daniels-Wells,
Yes.
Dr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad,
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Zeitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
and Mr. Marburger.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you all very much. Moving on to finance. We have the financial reports contained in Exhibit 11. We have the bill list contained in Exhibit 12. And we have the budget recommendations as contained in Exhibit 13. May I please have a motion and a second to approve those items?
So moved. Scott.
Second, Zeit.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Okay, thank you, Mr. Seitz. Any further question or comments? Okay, roll call, please, Mrs. Lemenza.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Zeitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Marburger,
Yes.
Ms. Daniels Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Nickel,
Yes.
and Dr. Orozco.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The motion passes again. Before we make a motion to adjourn the meeting, does anyone have any further questions or comments or things they would like to discuss?
Yes, I do. As soon as this meeting is over, I will close it out. I've emailed all of you a link to the separate executive committee meeting. So once you close out this one, then you can just go ahead, go to your email and join that next meeting. I'll start it as soon as we're done here.
All
Court,
right.
I have a question,
Sure.
and I should know this, but this is May. We have you here. We'll have a meeting in June. Will we have you at the June meeting as well?
Yes, yes. My final day is June 30th.
I thought so, but I wanted to be sure. Okay, thank you.
Whether you want me or not.
You're the only one that's not, no, Ashley's the only one that's how to work Zoom.
Pam.
Thank you, Mr. But we appreciate
Getting
you
better.
hanging in there.
Getting better.
Okay, with that in mind, may I please have a motion and a second to close their meeting?
So moved. Nickel.
Mickle, the second out there?
Second, Miller.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. And all of them say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.